It was a scorching summer afternoon, and the house felt quieter than usual. I stood in the kitchen, chopping fruits for a refreshing salad, trying to keep my thoughts occupied. My husband was away as usual, buried in work that demanded more of his time than our family did. Over the years, I had grown used to the long hours and the loneliness that came with them. William, my 21-year-old stepson, entered the kitchen unexpectedly. His presence was always easygoing, full of youthful energy that seemed to brighten the room. Over time, I had grown fond of him, thinking of him as part of my family. But lately, I noticed subtle changes in how he behaved around me, and it was becoming harder to ignore. "Hey, need any help?" he asked, his voice casual yet tinged with uncertainty. He glanced at the fruits I was slicing, then at me, his gaze lingering a split second too long. I smiled and handed him a knife. "Sure, you can start with the cantaloupe." He nodded and moved closer, standing beside me as he awkwardly began slicing. His hands were steady at first, but as the moments passed, I noticed a slight tremor in his grip. At one point, our hands brushed when I reached for a bowl. He froze for a moment before pulling back quickly, muttering an apology. "It's fine," I said lightly, pretending not to notice the awkwardness. As we worked, I caught him stealing glances at me, his eyes darting away every time I turned toward him. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. Suddenly, the room felt smaller, the air thicker. "Looks like we're all set," I said, breaking the silence as I slid the finished salad onto the counter. William nodded, his face slightly flushed as if embarrassed by something he couldn't explain. He lingered a moment longer than necessary before leaving the room. I stood there alone, staring at the empty doorway, replaying the interaction in my mind. I told myself it was nothing, just a passing moment. William was young, probably shy or nervous about something unrelated, but deep down I knew better. His glances, the accidental touches, it all felt deliberate. That evening, as I sat on the couch waiting for my husband to return, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between William and me. The days that followed felt strange, as if an invisible line had been drawn between William and me, though neither of us acknowledged it. He started hanging around the house more often, offering to help with tasks he never cared for before. At first, I thought nothing of it. Soon it became clear his presence wasn't random. One afternoon, I was folding laundry in the living room when William walked in. He didn't say much, just sat on the couch and turned on the TV. I kept working, but I could feel his eyes on me, stealing glances whenever he thought I wasn't looking. It made me uneasy, though I tried not to show it. "You've been busy," he said after a while, his tone casual but his expression more serious than usual. "Just keeping things in order," I replied, not meeting his gaze. He didn't respond, and the silence stretched longer than it should have. Finally, I looked up, and his eyes locked onto mine. There was something in his expression, curiosity maybe, or something deeper, that left me unsettled. Later that week, I decided to spend some time by the pool, hoping to clear my mind. I wasn't expecting company, but William appeared not long after. He claimed he needed a break from his studies. He dropped his towel onto a chair and jumped into the water without hesitation. I stayed on my lounge chair pretending to be engrossed in a book. But when William surfaced from the pool, I couldn't help but glance up. He caught me looking, and for a brief moment, neither of us looked away. "You're not getting in?" he asked, his voice light but his eyes heavy with meaning. "No," I said, shaking my head. "I'm fine here." He swam closer to the edge, resting his arms on the side of the pool. His gaze lingered on me in a way that felt far too intimate. I felt heat rise within me, not from the sun, but from the tension between us. "You've been quiet lately," he said, his tone softer now. I shrugged, trying to deflect. "Just tired, I guess." William didn't push further, but the way he looked at me made it clear he wasn't buying my answer. After a while, he climbed out of the pool, grabbing his towel and drying off. As he walked past me, water droplets fell onto the hot pavement. My heart raced in the quiet moments after, unable to shake the feeling of tension and change between us. I sat there replaying everything in my mind. I couldn't deny that something was happening, something I wasn't ready to confront. The way he looked at me, the way he lingered near me, it wasn't innocent anymore. It was deliberate, and the weight of it was impossible to ignore. Later that night, the house was quiet. I went to the kitchen for some water, hoping to clear my mind. The air felt heavy, not just from the summer heat, but from the tension that had been building over the past few weeks. I didn't expect to see William there, shirtless, leaning against the counter as he rummaged through the fridge. "You're up late," I said, trying to sound casual, though my voice betrayed the nervousness I felt. "Couldn't sleep," he replied without looking at me. He closed the fridge and turned around. His eyes met mine, and something in his expression made my breath catch, a mixture of vulnerability and boldness I hadn't seen before. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was loud, filled with words neither dared to say. I could feel the weight of his gaze, not on the glass in my hand, but on me. "I've been meaning to ask you something," he said, his tone hesitant. I tilted my head, trying to play it off as nothing. "What's that?" He hesitated, then took a step closer. "Do you ever feel like you don't belong where you are?" The question caught me off guard. I searched his face, unsure how to answer. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean," he said softly, like he was sharing a secret, "like you're meant for something else, something more, like you're stuck in a life that doesn't really fit you." I didn't know how to respond. The honesty in his words, the way they mirrored feelings I'd buried deep inside, left me shaken. Before I could think of an answer, he stepped closer again. "William," I started, but he cut me off. "I know this is wrong," he said quickly, his voice trembling. "I know I shouldn't feel this way, but I can't stop. I've tried, and I can't." I stared at him, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. "We can't," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He didn't move or look away. "I think about you all the time," he confessed. "I try not to, but I can't help it. You're all I see." His words hung in the air, raw and unfiltered. I wanted to tell him to stop, to leave, to pretend this conversation never happened. But I didn't. I couldn't. When he reached out, brushing his fingers lightly against my arm, it felt like fire. I should have pulled away, should have told him this was impossible. Instead, I stood frozen, letting the moment stretch into something it shouldn't have been. Then it happened. His lips touched mine, tentative at first but quickly deepening. The kiss was electric, overwhelming, and entirely wrong. I pulled back abruptly, tears in my eyes. "This can't happen," I said, my voice breaking. Without waiting for his response, I turned and left the room, leaving him standing there in silence. The next morning was unbearable. The air between us was thick with everything left unsaid. I avoided looking at William, focusing instead on mundane tasks, hoping to reclaim some sense of normalcy. But every time he entered the room, my pulse quickened, and I felt the heavy weight of his presence. At breakfast, he sat across from me, unusually quiet. My husband chatted about work, oblivious to the tension crackling between William and me. I nodded along, pretending to listen, but my mind was elsewhere, replaying that kiss over and over. After my husband left for work, William lingered in the living room. I tried to avoid him, but when I walked past, he called out softly, "Can we talk?" I froze. I knew I couldn't avoid this conversation forever. Without a word, I turned and sat down on the edge of the couch, keeping as much distance as possible. "I'm sorry," he began, his voice thick with regret. "I never should have. I didn't mean to make things harder for you." I shook my head, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. "William, what happened last night? It can't happen again. We crossed the line." "I know," he said quickly, leaning forward. "I know it's wrong, but I can't pretend I don't feel the way I do." "You mean more to me than anyone else ever has." His words cut through me like a knife. I wanted to tell him to stop, to leave me alone, but the sincerity in his voice made it impossible. "This isn't fair," I finally said, my voice trembling. "Not to me, not to you, and definitely not to your father." He flinched at the mention of his father, but didn't back down. "I can't help how I feel," he whispered. "I know you feel something too. Don't tell me you don't." The truth hung heavily between us. I couldn't deny it anymore. I had felt something too, something I couldn't explain or justify. But that didn't make it right. What we feel doesn't matter, I said firmly, though my voice wavered. We have to let go, William. We can't do this to him. He looked at me with a mixture of pain and determination. I don't want to hurt him, he said, but I can't pretend this isn't real. You're the only person who's ever made me feel this way before. Before I could respond, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway shattered the moment. My husband was home early. William and I exchanged a panicked glance. He quickly stood up and retreated to his room without another word. As I watched him disappear down the hallway, an ache settled deep in my chest, an ache I couldn't explain. The lines had been blurred, the boundaries broken, and nothing would ever be the same again. My heart was torn between guilt, loyalty, and something I dared not name. For the first time, I wasn't sure what I would do next.